Hi, everybody. Dr. Joan F. Land here. So glad that we are spending this time together. I have a really fascinating topic tonight. We are talking about the most common mistakes that people make in recovery from addiction to processed foods. So you're not going to find very many people who are successfully recovering from addiction to processed foods for a lot of different reasons. So how would you know what the mistakes are? I think it's very smart that you are here listening to this and learning, because all the mistakes are correctable if you know they're mistakes. Some people don't even know they're mistakes. So the mistake that we're going to talk about tonight is putting too much emphasis on food. So when I got into recovery in 1996, we really had very few tools with which to conquer processed food addiction. We had a list of foods and we were encouraged to be abstinent from them. And then we had the 12-step programs. So for many people, that was just not enough. And for 8 years, I did that program. For me, it was enough because I was really lucky. I was already had a lifestyle that did not include much food triggering. I already knew how to cook. I already didn't watch TV. I already didn't spend time in shopping environments. I already exercised, and I really, as soon as I learned what the sugars and flours were doing to me, I wrote a book about it. So I was already doing a lot of writing, which is very therapeutic. And I was able to persuade my household to keep the processed foods out of the house. So this was really worked in my favor, and I was able to maintain my recovery for 8 years. And then I began to slide, and I slid for just inch by inch by inch over another, well, till my dad died in 2014. So it was very hard for me to get my program back, but I did find a way to do it. So what am I talking about? How can I possibly say that we're putting too much emphasis on the food? Isn't this food addiction? Well, yes, it is. But here's what's happened over the decades of the obesity epidemic, which is everybody all this time has thought it was something to do with the food. And yes, it is something to do with the food, but it's not what you think. So we thought it was about too many calories. The truth is, it was because addictive substances were hidden in our food. So if you take those addictive substances out, like the sugars, flours, excessive salt, processed fat, dairy, caffeine, if you take those out of the food, the remaining food is not particularly fattening, and the obesity epidemic would be over tomorrow if we just all stopped eating the addictive parts of food. So when I say that's overemphasis on the food, was we thought in 1996 that if you could just take the addictive substances out of your food, you would be okay. Well, that is not true. That's not true at all. Food is only about 20% of recovery. Yes, you have to know how to make clean meals, but it's really easy. You know, you just take all your proteins when you out of the grocery bag, you put them on a baking tray, you bake them 20 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour until they're done, and then you wrap half of them up and put them in the freezer and wrap the other half and put them in the refrigerator, and then you just serve yourself from those. You do the same thing with your starches, throw some raw vegetables on there, and it's super easy. Just takes a few minutes here and there. So the food is not the issue. But we didn't know about the other 80%. The other 80% is triggering, all different kinds of triggers. And you think, oh, the obvious things like advertising of processed foods. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. There are thousands of triggers. very carefully planted by the processed food industry, trained by the tobacco industry, addictive triggers. So you have to look at the cueing, you have to look at what you're being exposed to all day long. Okay, so now you know that food is only 20% and the rest of it, the other 80%, is working out the triggers, finding the right community, getting the right triggers in, the recovery triggers to replace the relapse triggers. And that's a long process. You're kind of reordering almost every aspect of your life. So you want to be in a good group to do that. Okay, that's okay. But here's what happened during all those decades when we thought it was the food. People kept looking at the food and not getting better. So they would put a lot of effort into getting the food exactly right, but they were still binging. They would put a lot of effort into exactly weighing and measuring every little iota of food, and they were still lapsing. They were still having cravings. They were still white knuckling it, holding on, trying not to eat something. They didn't know about all the other triggers. So here's the belief system that came out of all of those decades of thinking, oh, it's just the food. The belief system is, oh, well, if I'm still lapsing and I'm still binge eating, and I'm still compulsively overeating, and I'm still picking up foods I don't want to be picking up when I don't want to be picking up, it must be because I'm not doing the food well enough. So that is the myth. I'm not doing the food well enough because I'm still overeating. And then you would relapse, you would regain the weight, and you say, well, I didn't do the food well enough. I didn't try hard enough. I wasn't consistent enough. I'm going to try harder. And so with every diet cycle, the brain becomes hungrier and hungrier. So we're trying harder and harder and harder to get this food right because we don't know what really is causing it. And it's just getting worse. So we try harder and harder and harder. And we think, oh, I have to do this absolutely perfectly. I have to do this absolutely perfectly. I'm not doing it perfectly enough because I'm still regaining the weight and I'm still eating foods that I don't want to eat. I wake up in the morning, I have my plan, and then I can't follow it. It must be because I'm not doing the food perfectly enough. That's not true. That is not true at all. You could be doing the food great. You are doing the food great. Everybody I've ever met who's in recovery from food addiction or wants to be really does. I mean, they follow diets. They have followed diets for decades. Occasionally, I will meet somebody who really doesn't know how to cook. And then I give them my little, meal prep manual. And they say, oh, I can make all my food in 2 hours a week. Great, I'll do that. And off they go. And in the research, what we see in the research, now remember, I wrote and edited the textbook in processed food addiction. There are lots of different food plans that work great to restore health, but they all have one thing in common. They take out the processed foods. Whether it's paleo, whether it's keto, whether it's low carb, whether it's low fat, whether it's Mediterranean, all of those food plans have one thing in common. They take out the processed foods. That's the whole thing about food. That's all. That's all. It's not that complicated. The other 80% is very complicated. The other 80% is relationships, and it's your body, and it's environments that are just constantly at you, and it's emotions, and it's loneliness. So yes, there are a lot of triggers right in the food, those addictive substances, but all those other things, the other 80% of it, they need tending to. They need healing. They need somebody to really take care and to be with you and work on them. So what happens is that people come up to a program And they say, I am not going to do this. I have failed so many times. And so they do try one more time. And they start to focus entirely on the food. Okay, I'm going to get the food right this time. I'm going to make this absolutely perfect. And of course, they fall off right away. And they hate themselves. And they blame themselves. And they chastise themselves because they don't know about the other 80%. So you see how terrible this is? How this would lead to really deep self-blame and even self-loathing and self-stigmatizing. So I want you to know that you have been perfect all along. You've done a great job on your food, but nobody has ever coached you through the other 80%. The relationships, the body pain, the emotions, the loneliness, and then all the triggers in the environment. So those are things that when you, and you know what, the next time you look at a program or you talk to your health professional, you say, you know what, I think I'll work on these other things. I'll get my relationships in order so that my family stops bringing processed foods into the house. Or I'll solve the loneliness problem. I will get involved somewhere. Or I'll find people who want to eat clean and they will teach me how to work through the emotions. So this is not your fault. And you have been doing enough and trying hard enough this whole time. You're fine. You're okay. It was never you. It was the programs. It was people telling you it was about the food when the food was only 20% of the problems that we work through. So I hope you're excited. I hope you're excited to find out this good news. And I hope you will go talk to your health professional about getting the right support, the right education, the right information about how to set up the other 80% so that your food works for you. And you can always contact me at foodaddictionreset@gmail.com. That's foodaddictionreset@gmail.com. Or you can go to www.foodaddictionreset.com and you can take the self-quiz for food addiction. And you can also join our Facebook group, Food Addiction Education. We would love to have you there. But check all this out with your health professional first. I'm here to help you. I have been looking for you to give you help and information since I got sober off of sugars and flours in 1996. And I'm glad we're finally meeting. Take care now. Dr. Jonah Flynn signing off.